Okay, let me summarize what we got through yesterday in terms of understanding the story with Esau, and then I'm going to consider an objection, and then make another observation, and then we'll go on to other things. Isaac announces that he's going to give a blessing to Esau, and Rebekah tells Jacob to impersonate his brother, and he does so successfully. The blessing is delivered as an act of prophecy, which means that God himself, so to speak, confirms that the blessing should go to Jacob and not to Esau, that Isaac, in fact, made a mistake. And the aftermath, both for Isaac and for Esau, shows that it was absolute. The fact that Isaac was misled does not mean that the blessing is invalid. Even Esau does not complain that it's invalid. He just asked for another blessing. And the blessing that Isaac thought he was giving to Esau was only money, power, and success. There was nothing spiritual in it. The spiritual blessing was given to Jacob at the end of the parsha. There's not anywhere a hint that Isaac is upset with Jacob, angry at Jacob. Indeed, it seems that because Isaac was making a mistake in trying to give the blessing to Esau, Jacob did what he had to do. And they had the prophecy to his mother on record that the blessing that Isaac wanted to give was a mistake. And there seems to be no hesitation whatsoever in the relationship to Jacob anywhere in the aftermath of the entire Bible. Except one place. Except one place, which I will now show you. And I will show you that this place is the exception that proves the rule. Even though those words, as a logician, offend me. But loosely speaking, one could have that as an observation. Look at page 151. This is a little bit down the road, and Yetz Hashem will get there someday in detail. Jacob is fulfilling his parents' direction to go and get married by taking up residence with his mother's brother, Laban. And Laban has two daughters, and Jacob wants to marry Rachel, and he agrees to work for 7 years for the right to marry Rachel. He works for the 7 years, it's over, and a party is made to celebrate the wedding. And at night, Laban, the father, substitutes an older sister, the older sister, Leah. When Jacob gets up in the morning, he sees that it's Leah. So he confronts his father-in-law, uncle, Laban, and he says to him, bottom of the page, 151, verse 25, and it was in the morning that behold, it was Leah. So he said to Laban, what is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I worked for you? Why have you deceived me? Now watch Laban's answer. Laban said, such is not done in our place, to give the younger before the elder. Such is not done in our place, to give the younger before the elder. Can you feel Laban's elbow in Jacob's ribs? Like you did? You stepped in front of your older brother? We don't do that. No, here the older goes first and the younger goes second. We don't do like you did, where you cheated your older brother out of what he was supposed to get. This is definitely an elbow in the ribs. This is definitely a condemnation of what Jacob did. Okay? However, how are we going to get around it? Yeah?
I mean, I understand. I recognize that it's very similar, but can you categorically say that this is definitely Laban poking Jacob in the ribs?
Why does he emphasize it is not done so in our place?
Can it be a coincidence?
If you say it can be a coincidence, you can deny all interpretation of anything that happens. All science goes down the drain. This happened, this could be a coincidence. Once you start with coincidence, you deny significance to everything. You take a look at something, you want an explanation. If it's not obvious to speak that way, then you want to say it's coincidence just denies the project of explaining things.
Yeah, but how do you know it's him? Like, how do you even know he knew about what Jacob did? How Jacob took his blessing? How did Laban even?
It's 7 years later. Their family. This is his nephew's life, right? But how can we avoid the implication that the Bible is criticizing Jacob?
Well, it says Laban said it, and Laban is also not known as like a prestigious character in the Bible.
Yeah, he's one of the chief evil agents in the Bible. He's evil across the board. We'll study him in Yetzer Hashem. He's a villain in the Bible. Now, if you're an author and you want to put your philosophy into a book, in whose mouth do you put the words that express your philosophy? In the mouth of a hero or a villain? Obviously, a hero. You don't put the words in the mouth of a villain. The fact that Laban condemns Jacob is a backhanded compliment. If this representative of evil condemns you, if you want to make anything out of it all, you must be pretty good. Because evil people don't like you. Evil people are against you. Okay, that's a pretty good reputation to have, that evil people are against you. This is the only place where reference is made to Jacob's taking the blessing, and maybe the birthright as well. But since there's a critique coming from an evil person, it does not express God's evaluation. And nowhere else is it mentioned anywhere in the entire Tanakh. So the judgment of the Torah on the incident is one where Jacob comes out perfectly clean. No faults whatsoever. In neither case, neither the birthright nor the blessing, is there any critique of what Jacob did. Yeah.
What about from Esau? He says he's going to kill Jacob.
Sure, he's if anything even more evil than Laban. He becomes our enemy for all of history. The ultimate reckoning before the coming of the Messiah will be to have that reckoning with Esau. We say it every morning. The Saviors will go up on the Mount of Zion to judge the Mount of Esau, and then Hashem will be king. So he's throughout one of the. I didn't even bother to mention him because he's the one who lost out. But his critique is certainly worthless in terms of what represents God. God has a lot of spokesmen in the Torah. All the prophets that you have in the section of the prophets, and there's not a hint of any condemnation whatsoever of what Jacob did. So this is it's very important to know that the text as a whole gives full support to Jacob in this incident. Yeah.
I was interested. Is the only way for there to be like peace for us to destroy Esau's like nation, or would they?
No, it says lishpot as Harisov, to judge. Always it's a possibility that they'll change their tune. They'll change their Amalek, of whom you may have heard, is the grandson of Esau, and he's the quintessential enemy. And even Amalek can change his policies and be accepted. So no one is condemned to destruction. No one is condemned to destruction. It's very important. No one is ever condemned to destruction. Yeah.
So we say that Laban is one of the most evil characters in Chumash, right? And Rebecca, when he sent Jacob out to go find a wife, she sent him to Laban. So wouldn't it be, if you want to go for him to find like a nice girl, you wouldn't want to send him to a place where it's like a house of evil, kind of?
It's an interesting question. First of all, Rebecca is Laban's sister. So she knows him well. They grew up together. As a matter of fact, both of Laban's daughters were great people, great righteous people. So either she knew, they were already born and developed, the two girls. Either she knew from direct information from the family, or she knew that it was expected to be so. You're right. She'd have to have a reason for overcoming the fact that he was going to Laban. And in fact, the two women become the mothers of the Jewish people. both of them. He ends up married to both of them, and they both become mothers of the Jewish people. So it's a gigantic thing. Okay, yeah.
A lot of stuff we're quoting right from here, and you're saying how there's like no evidence, like pointing to the contrary in here. But what about the oral tradition? Is there anything in there that
Zero, absolutely zero. Now let's go back. I want to show you two more things in the parsha itself where we're talking about this. To page 143. This is where Isaac gives Jacob the blessing of being the third patriarch. Now he starts at the top of the page, chapter 28, verse 1. Isaac summoned Jacob, blessed him, and instructed him, and said to him, do not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Go to Padan Aram and get married there. And you should have the blessing of Abraham. Now, some of you are not aware of this, and some of you will remember when I mention it. When Isaac was of marriageable age, when there's a question of Isaac getting married, what happened? Abraham took the household servant. He said to him, go to this household, Laban's household, and find a wife for Isaac. And the servant says, okay, I'm going. I'll go and I'll try. Suppose she doesn't want to marry. Suppose she doesn't want to come back to the land of Israel. What should I do then? And he says, if you try and fail, you've done your best, but don't take a Canaanite woman. Don't take a Canaanite woman. So the resistance to Canaanite women goes back a generation. Already in Isaac's case, the Canaanite women are disqualified. This story started where Esau married two Canaanite women. And his parents were very upset by it. And it says his father and his mother, putting father first. And now Jacob is being told, don't take a Canaanite woman. Go to your relatives and get a woman from there. So there's obviously tremendous resistance here to the Canaanite women. Now look at verse 6. When Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him off to Padan Aram to take himself a wife from there, as he blessed him, he commanded him, saying, you shall not take a wife from among the daughters of Canaan. That's what Isaac said to Jacob when he sent him off. Don't take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. And Esau saw that Jacob obeyed his father and mother and went to Padan Aram. Then Esau perceived that the daughters of Canaan were evil in the eyes of Isaac his father. He doesn't care about his mother. He only serves his father. But okay, the father whom he respects, the father whom he loves, whom he serves, the women of Canaan are evil in his father's eyes. So Esau went to Ishmael. Ishmael is in the family. Ishmael is Abraham's son. He went to Ishmael and took Malos, the daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, sister of Isaac, in addition to his wives, as a wife for himself. How does that strike you? Yeah.
Well, if his issue was that he realized and he wanted to respect his father, why wouldn't he divorce the two women?
But I mean, that's stage. That's the ABC. He didn't realize that you have to have a wife from within the family. He realized that the Canaanite women were evil in his father's eyes. So what does he do? He goes and marries one from the Abraham family. And the text emphasizes, in addition to his wives. Excuse me, that wasn't the issue. It shows you again, he's a person who doesn't rise to the challenge. I don't want to say can't, because that would take away his free will. But he doesn't rise to the challenge. He knows. He sees the issue. He sees it in front of him. Okay? Now, there's a very instructive Rashi here. Go back to verse 5, on the same page. So Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went toward Padan Aram to Laban, the son of Bethuel the Aramean, okay, brother of Rivkah, brother of his mother, is going to his uncle, okay. Rebekah, mother of Jacob and Esau. Rashi writes on those words, mother of Jacob and Esau, I don't know what that teaches us. I don't know what that teaches us. Here, Rebekah is identified as the mother of the two brothers. Rashi writes, I don't know what that's for. Now, you may say, okay, very nice. Rashi's an honest commentator. He doesn't hide his own faults, and he doesn't hide his own ignorance, and he's telling it. Yes. But now let's review the story and notice how ubiquitous this style is. I didn't make a point of it, but let me show you how the family relations are repeated over and over again all the time. All the time. Go back to page 135. Isaac speaks to Esau and tells him to go hunting. Verse 5. Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to Esau, his son. Esau went to the field. Rebekah said to Jacob, her son, saying, we know who these people are. The lineage is earlier in the story. Right? I heard your father speaking to your brother Esau. How many Esau's are there? Is there a cousin, and an aunt, somebody's their uncle? His name is Esau. Bring me. So now my son, heed my voice, going out of the flock, etc. Then bring to your father. 11 at the bottom of the page. Jacob replies to Rebekah, his mother. Okay. 13. But his mother said to him. Okay, so he went and fetched. 15, Rebekah then took her oldest son's Esau's clean garments. How many times do you have to tell me she's his mother? We know she's his mother. Clothed Jacob, her younger son. 32 on the next page. Isaac, his father, said to him. Next page, 42. When Rebekah was told of the words of her older son Esau. So the relationships are mentioned over and over again. And by the way, this is not unique to this story. It's a piece of biblical style to mention the relationships over and over again. Now Rashi says nothing in all of those relationships. Nothing. Not at all. He's totally silent. Only at the very end of the story, where it says Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau, Rashi says, I don't know what that teaches me. What do you deduce from that?
Teaches you the rest of the time that there's a specific reason for it.
And that Rashi
knows the reason.
He knows it. He knows he could understand all the other ones, and he takes it as so obvious he doesn't bother to comment. All he tells you is that here, I don't know what it is. Here I'm lost. And I think the simple understanding is when you perform an action, especially an action where you're relating to other people, we relate to other people in a multitude of ways. Imagine a person whose father is his professor in a class. So the child is sitting there and his father's teaching. He can interact as child and father. He can interact as student and professor. He can interact as younger person and older person. There are many different ways in which they can interact. Sometimes they get confusing. Sometimes they cause problems in parent-child. Many times a child will be sent to a school where the parent is not teaching because they don't want those roles to be confused. Here it's telling you every time something was done, it was done with the relationship in mind. Sometimes it says her son, sometimes it says her older son and younger son. So then it means that's relevant. Now, it doesn't take too much to project yourself into her psychology and say, okay, I'm dealing with my older son. Okay, I'm dealing with my younger son. What Rashi's telling us is at the very end, where it's talking about going off to the mother's brother, it says, okay, he sent him off to Laban. Who's Laban? A child at Besuel. Okay, that puts him in the family. His mother's brother, good. He's going off to his uncle. And then it says, his mother's brother, the mother, she's the mother of the two boys. At this point, she being the mother of the two boys doesn't seem to play any role. And that's why Rashi says it doesn't, I don't know what it teaches me. But this is important because, first of all, that means that when you'll come to a point where you'll study Rashi, when Rashi is silent, it doesn't mean that there's nothing to learn. It doesn't mean that there's nothing to analyze. It may mean just that Rashi, for whatever reason, thought it was obvious enough that it didn't need comment. So Rashi's silence. If you see a problem and you think up a solution, and Rashi's silent, you don't say to yourself, "Oh, then my thoughts must be wrong," because if there really were a problem, I really need a solution, Rashi would have said so. No, that's not true. That's not true.
Coming back to an issue from yesterday, It said that Rebecca said to how Rebecca told Isaac, like that Jacob should go, and said it in like a weird way. Why didn't Rebecca just tell Isaac Esau is planning on killing Jacob and he needs to leave?
Good. You did ask that. And I meant to answer explicitly. Remember, the reason why Isaac wanted to give Esau the blessing. He wanted to give the blessing because he loves him, and he wants to save him. For Rebecca to say to Isaac, "You've got it wrong," he's prepared to commit murder and so forth and so on. Either he won't hear it, or he'll be deeply wounded by it. And she doesn't want to accomplish that. She doesn't want to accomplish that. Now, I hinted something to you yesterday. I'm going to fill it in a little bit. I said that this is a multi-generational problem. Abraham loved Ishmael. Isaac loved Esau. Jacob loved Joseph, perhaps too much, differentiating him from the other brothers, giving him special status, and the oral tradition condemns him for that. What's going on here, this is based on the Zohar, what's going on here is this. Abraham has certain character, certain philosophy, certain value or principle that he stands for. It's loving kindness. Isaac stands for a different principle. The second generation, in this case, can't be identical to the first generation. It has to chart out a different territory. Isaac is strict justice. Abraham knows that. He knows that. And he loves Isaac. Then he recognizes that the future is not going to be identical to his contribution. But Ishmael is on Abraham's side of the line. Ishmael's fundamental motivating character is also loving kindness. So Abraham, so to speak, can't help feeling, but that's me. That's me. Isaac isn't me. Isaac is a complementary principle other than me. So, okay, Isaac is the future, no question about it. But still, how can I just let Ishmael go? So when Sarah says to Abraham, kick him out, kick Ishmael out because he's become vicious, Abraham can't take it. He can't take it. And God has to tell Abraham, do what she says because she's right and you're wrong. He can't see it, can't bring himself to kick him out because he's too tied up in him. Isaac is too tied up in Esau. Jacob gives Joseph a coat of many colors, and he treats him with favoritism, even though he's the next youngest son. That causes envy of the other brothers against him. And the Talmud says, don't ever single out one of your children in a way that makes the others feel that they're inferior and will be envious. Don't do that. Because Jacob did it, and it led to the descent into exile in Egypt. Even though it would have gone anyway, and the whole thing with the Brisbane of Sorry, I'm saying that for the recordings. But still, the Talmud says not to do it. In each case, the patriarch focused on one of his children who carried his identity and was too connected to him and gave him too much favoritism. So this is, we get a little bit of a picture of what's going on here in the fault that's at stake. Isaac wants to save Esau because although Esau is Isaac's character going bad, but it's Isaac's character, it's Isaac's dynamics. And that's why he wants to save him. So that gives a little bit more background as to what's going on here. Are we together? Okay, now just a little footnote. What I told you about, look on page 149. Talking about family relations as part of a story. All right, you know what? Let's do this and we'll get to it on 149. Yeah.
Was there any significance between how Jacob was sent to go through his mother's side of the family, through his mother's brother, and then how how Esau was sent to go through his father's side of the family, through Ishmael?
Let's figure this out. There has to be. You're making a very good observation. There has to be. Something like that can't happen by accident. I never noticed that. See, he's going after he's going after his father's child. And here he's going after his mother's brother's child. It's a very, very interesting observation. I don't know what to say. It's a nice observation. So that's something that has to be thought about. A nice observation. Yeah.
So you said Avram is loving kindness, Isaac is strict justice. What's Yaakov? What's his?
Yaakov is a kind of amalgam of the two, but what kind of amalgam is quite subtle. I worked on models for that for years, and none of them worked. And I explained my problem to my oldest son, whom I'm quoting all the time, as you notice. And he said to me, Abba, the reason why you're not succeeding is because you're bringing models from chemistry and models from physics and models from mathematics. You need a Jewish model. You don't need one of those models. And then he took a model of the Kabbalah, from the Kabbalah, and he showed me how the model works. So I have some idea now as to how it's supposed to, and he showed me a source for it. So I have some idea how it does work, but I'd have to give a lot of background before I could. But it is some kind of amalgamation of the two, setting up some kind of balance between the two. But it's a subtle kind of balance. Okay, let's take a look here. I want to get to the remark on the next page, but on 147 at the very bottom, here Jacob was sent off on this journey, so he's going. A lot to learn in these next few verses. Jacob lifted his feet, he went, whatever that means, he went toward the land of the Easterners, because Haran, where Laban lives, is east of here. He looked, and behold, a well in the field. And behold, 3 flocks of sheep lay there beside it, for from that well they would water the flocks. And the stone over the mouth of the well was large. Now the text is giving us background for the social dynamics in that area. When all the flocks would be assembled there, they would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep. Then they would put back the stone over the mouth of the well in its place. Can you figure out what the stone is for?
Keeping the water fresh.
Keeping the water fresh. What do you say?
Just to cover the well.
Okay, but why are they covering the well? So you can say to keep the water fresh.
From evaporating?
Can't hear you?
From evaporating?
Evaporating. What's the picture here? They wait until all the flocks are there. Then they roll the stone from the mouth. The text says that the stone over the mouth of the well was large. Why does it tell me that?
So the flocks couldn't drink it all the time?
Or it's a large well.
Large wells, say it's a large stone? Tell me the well is large. Don't tell me the stone is large.
Yeah.
It could also be that they don't want to have to move it multiple times.
They don't want to have to move it multiple times. Can you think of something a little more, perhaps, practical in terms of society that would motivate having a large stone?
Well, I'm thinking more for the animals. I don't want all the animals to have like a fair chance to drink. They don't want some to come first before others.
Oh, so how large do you think the stone was?
Larger than the well?
It was so large that it took all of them together to roll it off. So no one could possibly get any extra share of the water. A stone that'll take 25 people to roll it off, if 2 or 3 make a little coalition decide to steal some water, they're not going to be able to do it because there's a large stone on the mouth of the well. It makes sure that it gets shared fairly. It could also be that it prevents other people from the outside from using the water, and you have a right to do that. If you have a city with a well, you have a right to restrict the use of the well to your own city. You don't have to give it out to everybody comes by. Right? This is an economic measure. Okay? Now, watch this. 4. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where are you from?" And they say, "We are from Haran," which is the city that he's going to. It's in the vicinity. He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And they said, "We know." And he said to them, "Is it well with him?" They answered, "It is well. And see, his daughter Rachel is coming with the flock." They see her at a distance. He said, "Look, the day is still long. It's early in the day. It's not yet time to bring the livestock in. Water the flock and go on grazing." He's giving them instructions. Who's he? He's a stranger. He's an interloper wandering into their district. Who is he to give them instructions? First of all, go back to verse 4. How does he start the conversation? My brothers. He's a stranger. He says, my brothers. By the way, in modern Hebrew, in the last few years, the way Israelis address one another is achi, my brother. It's unbelievable. It's beautiful to hear. That's how they talk to one another, my brother. It's very new, just the last few years. He's going to give them mussar, as we say. He's going to tell them, you're not carrying out your responsibilities as shepherds correctly. How are you going to give it to them? You're going to beat them up? He's going to yell at them and tell them they're criminals? No, you start, my brothers, and you inquire about the people of the city. Turns out that by the way, he's very much older than they. I think he's 70 years old or something. So he has the respectability of age also. But he starts out, this is a good lesson in social strategy. If you want to bring up to someone some place in which he's perhaps failing, start by saying something that it's inclusive and relational before you bring that up. Okay, and now look what they say in verse 8. All right, I would just change the translation by taking out the comma. They said, we will be unable to until all the flocks will have been gathered, and they will roll the stone off the mouth of the well. We will then water the flock. You're right, the day is young. You're right, if we could, we should water the flocks and go on. But we can't do it till all the flocks are gathered. Okay, somebody had a hand up.
Yeah, going to earlier in the story, they said, and they said, we know, and then he said, is it well with him? Is what well with him?
Well, that's a general way of asking, how's he doing?
Okay.
Now watch. While he was still speaking to them, Rachel arrived at her father's flock, for she was a shepherdess. Now watch this sentence. And it was, when Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the flock of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came forward and rolled the stone off the mouth of the well and watered the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother. Man, 3 times in the same sentence, it says Laban, his mother's brother. Maybe people forget from page to page, they're drifting, it's like reading after cocktails. But 3 times in the same sentence to say his mother's brother, it means everything he did, everything he perceived, he was thinking of his mother. He's not relating to Laban as an independent individual at all. He's saying, this is my mother's brother, and that determines how I have to relate to him. That's why the text says, and this is an indication of what I told you before, that the statement of relationships is not to give you the information. You couldn't possibly need the same information 3 times in the same sentence. But it means to describe the mental attitude of the person, that what he's doing with that particular relationship in mind. That's the confirmation here that you get from this. Okay? Okay, let's read a little bit further on. I don't know if I'll be able to finish everything today, but let's see how it goes. 11. Then Jacob kissed Rachel, and he raised up a voice and wept. Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative. He was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. Now, the cautious reader who has in his mind certain stereotypes says, what, he kissed her? Give me a break. What's going on here? Right? She doesn't even know who he is. Then he tells her who he is. Is this infatuation? Oh, man, she's good looking. Right? Stranger! She's very young. He's much older. As old as her father or older. And then he raised up his voice and wept. Is that how a person acts when he's captured by infatuation? And he steals a kiss, starts crying? Not the last time I checked. I read a lot of stories about infatuation. They don't have that element prominent in the story. There's something interesting is going on here. I'll just give you one hint. Jacob is a prophet. He already had the dream, which we studied in detail, of God speaking to him with the ladder, the angels going up and down. Jacob is a prophet. When a prophet looks at the world, he doesn't look at it with our eyes. He sees a lot of things that we don't see. In particular, he sees that she's going to be the mother of the Jewish people. I didn't say that quite right. We'll see it as the story goes on. There are some things he doesn't see, but that he sees, and he sees correctly. So that's what he's reacting to. And when she finds out that this is not, and look how he identifies himself. Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative. Number one, father has lots of relatives on both sides of the family. That he was Rebekah's son. Two things. Number one, I'm not a stranger. I'm part of your family. And number two, I'm on the Rebekah side of the family. Rebekah came from this house. She ran and told her father. Okay, fine. That's Laban. And it was when Laban heard the news that Jacob's, his sister's son, he ran toward him, embraced him, kissed him, took him to his house. My nephew. He recounted to Laban all these events. He tells him why he ran away. 14. Laban said to him, nevertheless, you're my father's flesh and blood. Nevertheless? Nevertheless always means there's resistance here. I really would like to do PQR, but you're my father's, you're my flesh and blood, so. And he stayed with him a month's time. So here he is, he's running for his life, running to get married, coming alone with no resources, comes in. His uncle says, I really would prefer something else, but you're my flesh and blood. He stays with him a month's time. 15. Then Laban said to Jacob, just because you're my relative, should you serve me for nothing? Tell me, what are your wages? That means the instant he put his sleeping bag down on the floor, Laban put him to work. His relative. No, you're staying with me, work. The instant he came in, now he works for a month. He's working for a month. At this point, Laban gets a little embarrassed. He now has a new full-time worker. Shouldn't workers be paid? So he says, just because you're my relative, should you serve me for nothing? You're serving me, we're relatives. Maybe you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart because we are relatives. That's not right. You're a worker, you should be paid. Name your rate. What do you want for wages? Now, Laban had two daughters, Rachel and Leah. The description is Rachel was beautiful. Leah's eyes were tender, whatever that means. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I'll work for you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. Laban said, look how he accepts the deal. It is better that I give her to you than I give her to another man. How's that for an endorsement? How's that for, for an evaluation? Well, you're better than another guy. That's a very weak statement. Okay. Remain with me. 7 years. Jacob is volunteering to work for 7 years. We'll have to understand what kind of idea is that, to volunteer for 7 years. And now comes the corker, which we'll have to think about for tomorrow. So Jacob worked for 7 years, and they seemed to him as a few days because of his love for her. He loved her so much that 7 years went by as just a few days. Does that make psychological sense? I don't think so at all. If you love her, then you want to marry her. You want to marry her to wait 7 years? The 7 years ought to feel like 7 eons, not just a few days. Imagine you're in love and you want to get married. You go down to the courthouse and you say, I want an appointment to make a marriage. They say, well, our calendar is very full. We can give you a date in 2022, but you don't mind, right? I mean, you really love her, right? Well, it says in the famous book that if you really love her, the 7 years will go by. It's but a few days. I don't think you will be amused. And I don't think you will be comforted by that description. I said, what do you mean? We're in love. We want to get married now. What could the text possibly mean by saying that because he loved her, that 7 years went by as but a few days. These are okay. I don't want to explain it now. Let people think about it. And tomorrow we'll pick it up here and we'll explain this. We'll go on with the story.